Morning rain tapped steadily against the window panes as I prepared my tea. Lakewood had always been generous with precipitation, particularly in spring when the lake seemed determined to share its abundance with the sky. I watched water droplets gather and slide down the glass, forming whimsical trails. How many mornings like this had I witnessed in this house? Impossible to count. My name is Merle Hadley. In 3 days, I turned 68. For 4 decades, I taught mathematics at Lakewood High School, spending those years explaining to young minds the elegance of numbers and the beauty of logic. Retirement brought a quietness I once craved. Now, sometimes, I don't know how to escape it. My tea, Earl Grey, no sugar, just a drop of milk, had gone cold. Still, I remained at the window, watching rain and mentally reviewing the day's agenda. Groceries, cleaning, perhaps the library if weather permitted. The mundane tasks of an ordinary Tuesday. But somewhere at the edge of consciousness, my approaching birthday pulsed like a quiet ache. Would I celebrate alone? Again? The telephone's ring jolted me from these thoughts. The number displayed as unknown, but at my age, every call might be important. Mrs. Hadley? An unfamiliar female voice. This is Patricia from Lakewood Glamour, Beauty Salon. I'm confirming your appointment tomorrow morning at 10. I'd made no such appointment. I was about to say so when something stopped me. Why not? Perhaps a small change was exactly what I needed before my birthday. Yes, of course, I heard myself say. I'll be there tomorrow at 10. After hanging up, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom and opened the closet. Most garments were practical, understated. The wardrobe of a mathematics teacher accustomed to restraint. In the far corner hung the sapphire dress Frank had given me for our final anniversary together. To match the color of your eyes, he'd said. I pulled it out and held it against myself before the mirror. The wrinkles around my eyes had deepened considerably. My hair had turned completely silver, but my eyes, yes, they remained the same deep blue. Frank had died a decade ago, heart attack, sudden. We'd been making summer plans, and the next morning I woke a widow. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like another lifetime entirely. Every corner of this house held his memory. Frank had been a civil engineer, his hands always creating, building, repairing. The shelves he'd crafted, the table he'd restored, the garden bench from his final project. Sometimes I spoke to him aloud, especially when loneliness became unbearable. What do you think, Frank? I asked, returning the dress to its place. Will they come for my birthday? They meant my son G, his wife Tabitha, and their children, my grandchildren, 16-year-old Octavia and 12-year-old Fletcher. G is 42 now. We haven't seen each other in 3 months, not since Christmas when I'd asked to join them for holiday dinner. That evening had been awkward, strained smiles, forced pleasantries. Tabitha barely concealed her irritation. G remained distant. The grandchildren stared at their phones, occasionally glancing up to answer my questions with monosyllabic yes or no responses. When G was small, we'd been close. I'd helped with homework, cheered at soccer matches, read bedtime stories. Frank sometimes joked jealously, "Of course you love him more. He's my carbon copy." High school brought trouble. G fell in with questionable friends. His grades dropped. He became defiant. Frank and I worried, but we managed, channeling his energy into more productive pursuits. College changed G. He matured, became more responsible. He earned a finance degree, secured good employment. We were proud. And then came Tabitha, beautiful, ambitious, driven. They'd met at work, Lakewood Insurance. The wedding was lavish, 200 guests, many I'd never seen before. Even then, Tabitha made clear that G's family was now her, not his parents. After Frank died, our relationship with G became even more strained. He came to the funeral, helped with arrangements, stayed those first difficult weeks. Then he returned to his life. I don't blame him. He has family, career, responsibilities, but something shifted fundamentally. The bridge connecting us simply disappeared. Now our communication consists of rare phone calls and even rarer visits. Last year on my birthday, they didn't even call. Tabitha sent a text. Happy birthday, Merle. G's in a meeting, kids at practice, weekend swamped. Call soon. They never called. Rain intensified, so I postponed the grocery run. Instead, I began cleaning, scrubbing every surface, vacuuming carpets, washing windows. The work helped prevent dwelling on uncomfortable questions. Questions like, how had my life narrowed to just this house? Why did my only son seem to prefer I didn't exist? Why were my grandchildren growing up barely knowing me? Cleaning finished, I retrieved photo albums. Years captured on paper. G taking first steps, his graduation, our last family trip to the lake when Frank was still alive. I tried identifying the exact moment everything went wrong, but couldn't. Perhaps it happened gradually, imperceptibly, day by day. The doorbell surprised me. I wasn't expecting visitors. On the doorstep stood Dorothy, my neighbor and one of few true friends remaining. She held a container emanating delicious aromas. I figured you wouldn't want to cook in this weather, she said, extending the container. Chicken noodle soup, my grandmother's recipe. Dorothy is 72, but unlike me, she embraces her position as what she calls a venerable old lady. Widowed like me, but blessed with 3 children and 7 grandchildren who visit regularly. Come in, I invited, stepping aside. I was just about to make tea. We settled in the kitchen. Dorothy poured while I retrieved cookies I'd baked yesterday. Have you decided how you'll celebrate your birthday? She asked, seeming to read my thoughts. Hopefully with family, I said. If I can convince them to come? Dorothy snorted. No, you let them get away with too much. If I were you, I'd have spoken my mind long ago. And risk being completely alone? I sighed. You have yourself, Merle, and that's considerable. She squeezed my hand. Remember that. After Dorothy left, I stood at the window watching her cross the street, umbrella shielding her from rain. She was right. I'd let G and Tabitha get away with too much. Perhaps that was my mistake. I never demanded respect, never insisted on my place in their lives. I simply waited, hoping they'd remember me. Determined to act, I picked up my phone and dialed G's number. He didn't answer immediately. When his voice finally came through, it sounded impatient, as though my call was an unwelcome intrusion. Mom, something wrong. Nothing's wrong, G, I said, keeping my voice steady. I just wanted to remind you. Friday's my birthday. I thought perhaps you, Tabitha, and the children could stop by. Pause. Muffled voices. Apparently G was consulting Tabitha. Look, Mom, he finally answered. We've got a lot happening Friday. Tabitha has a presentation for a new insurance product. Octavia has rehearsal for the school play. And Fletcher... I understand, I interrupted, not wanting to hear the complete list of reasons why they couldn't spare time for me. It's no problem. Perhaps the weekend... Another pause. More muffled conversation. Actually, G's voice suddenly became more decisive. We could stop by Friday for a couple hours. Say, around 2? I couldn't immediately find words, caught by surprise. Really? That's wonderful, G. I'm so excited. Perhaps I'll make something special. What does Fletcher like these days? Is Octavia still vegetarian? Mom? He interrupted, familiar irritation creeping into his tone. Doesn't have to be anything special. We'll just stop by to wish you happy birthday, give you a gift, then move on. We really do have a packed day. Of course, I understand. I agreed quickly, not wanting to jeopardize this rare opportunity to see them all. Any time convenient for you works perfectly. Okay. His voice softened slightly. We'll be there around 2. After the conversation, I couldn't sit still with anticipation. family coming for my birthday. For the first time in years, we'd gather, not from obligation, not for Christmas or Thanksgiving, but to celebrate my day. Despite G's words about keeping it simple, I decided to prepare treats. Nothing extravagant, as he'd requested, but enough to show my happiness at seeing them. Eggplant lasagna, G's favorite since childhood. Chocolate pecan cake he'd always requested for his own birthdays. Vegetable salad for Octavia, though I wasn't certain she still followed that diet. Homemade chocolate chip cookies Fletcher had adored as a child. The following days passed in preparation. I visited the beauty salon for a cut and soft coloring that complemented my natural silver. "You look younger," the stylist said, and I allowed myself to believe her. I purchased a new blouse, sky blue to match my eyes, as Frank would have said. I tidied the house, though it was already clean enough. Dorothy came by to help with cleaning and cooking, though I insisted I could manage. "Let an old friend contribute," she said, wielding the cleaning cloth vigorously. "Besides, I'm curious to see your ungrateful son and his wife." "Dorothy!" I tried sounding stern but couldn't suppress a smile. "They're not so terrible." "Of course not. And I'm not an old gossip," she snorted. "Merle, dear, you're far too kind to them, always have been." On my birthday, I woke before dawn. Sun was just breaking through clouds, promising clear weather after a week of rain. I took this as a good omen. After showering, I donned the new blouse and navy slacks, applied light makeup, just enough to emphasize my eyes. For the first time, in ages, I felt beautiful. No, that's not quite the word. I felt visible, alive. By noon, everything was ready. Lasagna warming in the oven, cake on the table, salad in a large glass bowl, cookies arranged on a plate. I'd set out dishes and utensils, not too formal but attractive. At the table's center sat a small vase, holding the season's first flowers from my garden. At 2 o'clock precisely, I began getting nervous. What if they didn't show? What if G called last minute with changed plans? I was preparing myself for disappointment when I heard a car pulling up. "They're here, my family, for my birthday." At exactly 2, the doorbell rang. I took one final look in the mirror. New sky blue blouse, neat haircut, light makeup. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. "Happy birthday, Mom." G hugged me awkwardly, barely touching my shoulders as if afraid of contamination. He smelled of expensive cologne and business meetings. "Hello, Merle." Tabitha nodded, making no attempt to embrace me. Her thin lips stretched into a smile that never reached her eyes. She wore an immaculate gray suit with pearl earrings, the uniform of a successful businesswoman. The grandchildren stood behind their parents. Octavia, my 16-year-old granddaughter, kept her eyes on her phone, casting only a fleeting glance my direction. Her dyed dark hair fell across her face, concealing her expression. Fletcher, 12, was a gangly teenager with acne dotting his forehead and a sullen expression. Come in. I'm so happy to see you all." I stepped aside, allowing them entry. "Octavia, Fletcher. How you've grown." Octavia mumbled something unintelligible without looking up from her screen. Fletcher just shrugged, brushing past me. I felt a pang of disappointment, but tried not to show it. "Something smells good," G said, sniffing. "I told you not to go to any trouble." "It's just lasagna," I said, leading them to the living room. "Your favorite, with eggplant. And chocolate cake, nothing fancy." Tabitha surveyed my living room critically, slightly old-fashioned with framed photographs, bookshelves, comfortable armchairs. "You never decided to renovate." It wasn't a question, but a statement. "G and I could help you find a designer. Everything looks so dated." "I like my house the way it is," I tried, keeping my voice light. "It holds so many memories." "That's precisely why everything needs changing," Tabitha murmured, but I pretended not to hear. We settled in the living room, G and Tabitha on the sofa, children in chairs, me on one I'd brought from the kitchen. Conversation didn't flow. I asked about work, school, summer plans, receiving one-word answers or evasive phrases. "Shall we move to the table?" I suggested when the pause stretched too long. "The lasagna should be ready." At the table, atmosphere improved slightly. G praised the lasagna. Octavia grudgingly admitted the salad was not bad. Fletcher even took seconds, albeit silently. Only Tabitha barely touched her food, claiming she was watching her figure. "How's school, Octavia?" I asked, attempting conversation. "Your father mentioned you're in the school play?" Octavia lifted her eyes from her phone, regarding me as if I were sentient furniture. "Yeah, playing Juliet," she answered without enthusiasm. "Premieres in 2 weeks." Juliet? How wonderful. I was genuinely excited. "I'd love to see it. Perhaps you could get me a ticket." Octavia shot her mother a panicked look. Tabitha intervened smoothly. "I'm afraid that's impossible, Merle. We only have 4 tickets for us and my parents. You know how close Octavia is to Grandma Eleanor." "Of course," I nodded, feeling heat flood my face. "I understand perfectly." Turning to Fletcher, I tried again. "And how's soccer, Fletcher? Still playing?" "Not anymore," he answered, not looking up from his plate. "I swim now." "You do?" "I didn't know." "That's wonderful. Your grandfather Frank was an excellent swimmer when he was young." "Fletcher got a scholarship to a summer sports camp," G interjected, pride evident in his voice. "Coach says he has real potential." "That's marvelous," I smiled at my grandson. "I'd love to watch you compete." Fletcher shrugged non-committally. "Next season, maybe?" G replied uncertainly. Next season. Always the future, never now. I felt the hope with which I'd awaited this day slowly deflating. "Who wants cake?" I asked, rising from the table. "Chocolate with pecans." "We're on a diet," Tabitha said quickly, placing her hand on Octavia's shoulder. "And Fletcher needs to watch his weight for swimming." "I could eat a piece," Fletcher said suddenly, earning a disapproving look from his mother. "Just a small piece," Tabitha conceded. "And extra workout tomorrow." While I sliced cake, G pulled me aside. "Mom, we can't stay long," he said, lowering his voice. "Tabitha has a meeting at 5, and we still need to get the kids home and changed." I felt my heart constrict. They'd been here less than an hour. "Of course I understand," I said, trying to mask my disappointment. "I really appreciate you taking the time." When we returned to the table, Tabitha was already gathering her purse, clearly preparing to depart. Octavia hadn't looked up from her phone. Fletcher picked at his cake with a fork. "We should go," G announced, clapping his hands together. "But first, the present." Tabitha pulled from her bag a neatly wrapped medium-sized box tied with ribbon. "Happy birthday, Merle," she said with that same cold smile. "We picked this out as a family." I accepted the box, feeling a flutter of anticipation. A gift is always an act of consideration, regardless of contents. Perhaps they cared but didn't know how to show it. "Open it," G said hurriedly. I noticed a strange gleam in his eyes. I carefully untied the ribbon and removed the lid. Inside was emptiness. A completely empty box. Not a single thing. I raised a confused look to my son, waiting for explanation. Was this some kind of joke? Was the real gift elsewhere? And then they laughed, all 4 of them, loudly, unrestrainedly, with cruel pleasure. "You're just as empty," G choked out through his laughter. "An empty box for an empty woman," Tabitha said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Perfect match." Octavia was filming my face on her phone. Fletcher giggled, repeating, "Cipher, cipher." I froze, holding the empty box, unable to believe what was happening. My family, my son, my grandchildren. Had they come here deliberately to mock me? To humiliate me on my own birthday? My voice sounded strange, as if from far away. What does this mean? Oh, Mom, don't make that face. He was still laughing. It's just a joke. You were always so serious. A joke? I felt something inside me break while simultaneously something else, hard and cold, rose to take its place. You came to my birthday to give me an empty box and call me a cipher? This is a joke? Don't be so dramatic, Merle, Tabitha interjected, still smiling. It's just family humor. Family humor? My hand squeezed the box so hard the cardboard crumpled. We have very different understandings of the word family. G stopped laughing when he saw something in my face. Mom, don't take it so personally. We just wanted to have a little fun. At my expense. I didn't ask, I stated. Come on, Grandma, Octavia said, still holding her phone ready. Don't be such a drag. I rose slowly from the table, still clutching the crumpled box. I think you should leave now, I said quietly but firmly. You have an important meeting at 5, Tabitha. I wouldn't want you to be late. They exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this reaction. Perhaps they'd anticipated tears, begging them to stay, or simply swallowing my humiliation as I'd done all these years. Mom, don't be offended. G tried taking my hand, but I pulled away. It was just a stupid joke. Yes, a very stupid joke, I agreed, looking him directly in the eye. And very revealing. Thank you for taking the time to visit. I won't keep you any longer. I walked them to the door with a stone-faced expression. No tears, no recriminations, just cold politeness. They were clearly disconcerted, expecting drama, hysteria, pleading, but not this quiet, icy dignity. We'll call you this weekend, G said uncertainly, standing on the threshold. Don't bother, I said, closing the door. I stood in the hallway, listening to their car start and drive away. Only when the engine sound finally faded did I allow myself to slide down to the floor, back against the door. The empty box remained in my hands. Cipher. They think of me as a cipher, an old, unnecessary, contentless woman, 40 years of teaching, thousands of students instructed, a home created, a son raised. None of it meant anything to them. I am nothing. The tears finally broke through, and I sobbed, sitting on the floor of my empty house on my 68th birthday, holding an empty box. A perfect match, as Tabitha had said. I don't know how long I sat there, perhaps minutes, perhaps hours. When tears finally dried, I stood up, feeling pain in knees and back. Old age isn't just wrinkles and gray hair, it's also joint pain after sitting on hard floors. I walked to the kitchen and mechanically began clearing the table. Uneaten lasagna, nearly untouched cake, dirty plates, evidence of my humiliation. I threw away the food, washed dishes, wiped surfaces. The movements helped prevent thinking, feeling. When no trace of the feast remained in the kitchen, I climbed to my bedroom and sat on the bed's edge. The mirror across reflected an elderly woman with tear-stained eyes, wearing a sky-blue blouse purchased especially for a family reunion. Cipher. The word echoed in my head. Cipher, cipher, cipher. No, I'm not a cipher. I'm Merle Hadley, and I deserve better. Something shifted inside me. The hurt and resentment didn't disappear, but something else emerged. Anger. Quiet, cold anger. Not a flash of rage. A conscious decision not to let them treat me this way anymore. Pulled my address book from the nightstand and found a number I hadn't dialed in years. Robert Fisher, the lawyer who'd handled Frank's affairs after his death. My lawyer. It was nearly 7 in the evening. I wasn't sure he'd answer. But after the third ring, I heard his voice. Robert Fisher speaking. Hello, Robert. This is Merle Hadley, Frank Hadley's widow. We haven't spoken in years, but I need your help. It concerns my will and some other legal matters. Mrs. Hadley? I could hear surprise in his voice. Of course I remember you. What can I do for you? I need to see you as soon as possible. Tomorrow, perhaps? Tomorrow. He seemed to be checking his calendar. Yes, I can see you at 10 in the morning. Is it urgent? Yes, I answered, looking at the crumpled, empty box I still held. Very urgent. I want to change my will. And one more thing. Very well, Mrs. Hadley. I'll expect you tomorrow at 10. I hung up and took a deep breath. Something had ended today, but something had also begun. I would no longer be a blank slate to be ignored, mocked, dismissed. They think I'm empty, worthless. I'll show them how wrong they are. I tossed the crumpled box into the trash, removed my birthday blouse, and put on my house robe. This birthday was the last I'd spend waiting for their attention and love. I wouldn't wait anymore.